All right, and we're back.
Yay!
Yay! Yeah. You just remembered who we're about to talk about?
Yeah.
Yep. That's the proper reaction to this. Now I'm not going to go into super detail about this asshole, predominantly because there's or at least I'm 99% sure there's a Behind the Bastards episode that goes much deeper into David Duke's life and can say a whole lot more about him than I have the time to do right now.
Definitely feels like their wheelhouse.
But we're gonna be hitting some of the notes and then just diving into his political career.
Whoa.
Duke was forced onto the world in 1950 via Tulsa, Oklahoma. Duke enrolled at Louisiana State University, where he was mostly known for forming a white student group and wearing around a Nazi uniform from time to time.
When people tell you who they are the first time,
yeah, believe them.
them.
Yeah. Oh, you're wearing a Nazi uniform as a joke protest? Sure. Got it.
Oh, you got that tailored? Why?
Oh, no. So the year that Gary Tyler was arrested, Duke formed the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan and named himself the Grand Wizard. Duke was known for trying to mainstream the Klan and making them seem to care more about social issues than racial ones. And he also was the main force behind ditching the white robes for suits and ties. In 1980, though, Duke would leave his own organization because he couldn't stop members from doing, quote, stupid or violent things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
No, he's got...
I was doing so well in this episode, and now I'm angry!
Yes! So Duke's first foray into politics came in 1975, at the age of 25 when he ran for Louisiana Senate as a Democrat. He lost, but was able to gain 33% of the vote. He ran again in 1979 and finished second with 26% of the vote. And that was enough to make Duke think he could run for the Democratic nomination for president in 1980.
The lower number. You're not trying to get to 1.
No, 33%, 26%, fuck it, president. We got this. The thing, though, is his campaign didn't really last long enough to actually be voted on. 8 years later would be the presidential race that he was most known for. In the 1988 Democratic primary, civil rights leader Jesse Jackson was running a very serious campaign. If you had to make a list of people most likely to dislike Jesse Jackson running for president, David Duke would probably be more than likely at the top. As such, he entered the race in an attempt to battle Jackson head-on. Duke never had much of an influence in the race. He had trouble raising money, probably because former Klan CEO wasn't a really good resume for the late 80s Democrats, and never scored higher than 4% in any of the primary votes.
Oh, Christ, that's right. He's still running as a Democrat.
Yeah, yep. It didn't take very long for Duke to drop out, but not before accomplishing one of the weirder victories in primary history. David Duke won the New Hampshire Democratic primary for vice president.
There's one of those?
New Hampshire used to be a rare oddity that they had a primary for vice president for a while. But in 1988, Duke was the only person to qualify for the vice presidential ballot.
What does it take to qualify?
I don't know. But it's just such a...
I'm guessing the pool is made up of people who are running for president.
Yeah, almost everyone's running for president. No one's wasting their time running for vice president.
There's a whole, I'm just imagining like a beauty pageant where it's like you get to be the best runner-up.
Yeah, you get to be, I mean, it's not even that. It's like you're in a beauty pageant that's on some TV channel that no one knows about, and you're the only person there.
Right, it's streaming on Yahoo.
Oh, God. Oh, poor Yahoo.
Sorry.
Excellent burn, though. Accurate, excellent burn.
Please give us money for the podcast.
Yahoo doesn't have money. What is it, 1998? While Duke only got 264 votes in the presidential primary, he got over 10,500 votes in the vice presidential race, winning 99.7% of the vote. The remaining 0.3% went to 31 votes for 2 write-in candidates, who were...
I need like a Freud Jungian rundown of what that says about American Horse. It's like, oh, previous Nazi, current Grand Wizard, we'll let you be a heartbeat away.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me wonder how many people were just like, oh, I gotta vote for someone, and I don't know who the write-in is. David seems like a nice name.
David
I don't watch TV, and I don't read the news. Click.
So perfectly good one-syllable last name.
Yeah, I don't know why I put this in, but the two writing candidates was a guy who founded multiple computer magazines named Wayne Green, and the Queens, New York Community Board member Ann Fosner Darby. Fun fact about Ann Fosner Darby, in 2017, she became internet famous for making some super racist comments involving bike lanes becoming empty once, quote-unquote, Trump kicks out all the illegals. So more than 99.7% of the VP vote went to white supremacists.
Wow.
So the weird thing, though, is not just the Democrats had a vice presidential primary, the GOP also had one, and the same three people were on the ballot.
No, what?
And Wayne Green beat David Duke and Darby.
They picked the non-racist?
Yep. Different times, man. Different times.
Good lord.
Southern strategy, motherfuckers.
Oh,
in New
boy.
Hampshire. So a few months into the primaries, and things weren't looking good for Duke. Oddly enough, though, Duke took the hint and left the Democratic Party and moved on to a group of folks who would welcome him, whether he was their first choice or not. The Populist Party was founded as a far-right alternative in 1984 by anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist and Holocaust denier Willis Carto. Proving that two extremes are like a horseshoe, the first presidential ticket included white supremacist gold medal Olympian Bob Richards and cancer cure quack who would eventually die from cancer, Maureen Salomon. That combo was enough to net them 62,000 votes in their first year.
From the whole country?
Yes.
62,000? Great.
Yes.
Good. Just making sure.
By 1988, the party was already in disarray financially. There had been a belief that the party would gain credibility with the nomination of Congressman and future federal prisoner James Traficant. Bo Gritz had been named as the party's VP candidate, assuming Traficant would both say yes and win the party's committee vote. However, Traficant wasn't interested. And on March 7th, 1987, David Duke accepted the nomination in Sewickley, Pennsylvania. Duke declared the gathering the largest pro-white demonstration I've ever seen. Gritz refused the nomination for VP and was replaced by two new candidates. Weirdly enough, an out-and-proud white nationalist did not do better than a racist former Olympian. Duke was only able to make it onto the ballot in 11 states and won 47,000 votes. He did, however, win 1% of the vote in his home state of Louisiana.
Okay. Is David Duke the fringe candidate for this episode? Have you been catfishing me with Buddy the whole time?
With a few people.
We were just having a lovely time learning about Louisiana politics.
Learning about gentleman nicknames.
Yes, and Buddy. And now I have to sit through and listen to David fucking Duke.
Yeah, a little bit.
Damn it, Dusty!
It's okay. The presidential election hadn't gone what one would call great, but I doubt Duke really expected to win. If anything, he wanted more to be the new clean-cut poster fuckboy for the modern-day racist. And a national campaign certainly couldn't hurt.
He's a pretty proud boy.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great way to put it. But his desire to be viewed as a serious politician wasn't ever something you could doubt. And in 1988, his first real chance presented itself. State Representative Charles Cusimano had become a judicial district court judge and resigned his position. This caused a special election for the empty seat. Duke switched his party allegiance to the Republicans and entered the race along with 6 others, including John Treen, the brother of the former governor that Edwards beat the fuck out of. After the first primary, Duke was on top with 33.1% of the vote, but since he didn't hit 50%, he was forced into a runoff with Treen. Duke's victory made national news. So much so that for the runoff, Treen gained endorsements from Presidents Bush and Reagan, which is pretty much unheard of for local elections.
Yeah.
But Treen did the one thing that sets off baby boomers everywhere. He considered out loud the possibility of raising property taxes.
Bum, bum, bum.
The one thing that will ruin any Lyft drive.
Yeah.
After Treen had made that statement, Duke hammered him every single day on it until the final election. And on February 18th, 1989, by a margin of 227 votes, David Duke became the state representative of his little corner of Louisiana.
Wow.
Lucky for the world, state representative doesn't exactly carry a ton of power, and even less if you have no clue or interest in how to do the job efficiently. Duke's clueless style as a rep is best described by journalist Ron Gomez. Duke once presented a bill on the floor, one of the few which he had managed to get out of committee. He finished his opening presentation and strolled with great self-satisfaction back up the aisle to his seat. In his mind, he had spoken, made his presentation, and that was that. Before he even reached his desk and refocused on the proceedings, another first-term member had been recognized for the floor and immediately moved to table the bill. The House voted for the motions, effectively killing the bill. That and similar procedures were used against him many times. To Gomez's memory, Duke had only succeeded in passing one single bill, a law that prohibited movie producers or book publishers from paying jurors for their court experiences.
Well, that's going to lose you the juror vote.
I know, right? Well, I mean, he didn't mention taxes, so...
This is the time of those excellent mid-level crime dramas featuring a young Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, I mean, you got those Pelican Briefs.
Yes.
You got the Can't Handle the Truths.
Yes.
All of those books. Books that you find in Walgreens and airports.
Right.
Someone needs to pay those jurors.
Yes.
You racist motherfucker.
Your Grishams and...
The other... What? Are there others?
That guy.
Despite this lackluster first term, it was a new year, and Duke isn't going to sit on his racist-ass laurels. In 1990, Duke entered the race for U.S. Senate. Incumbent Democrat J. Bennett Johnson had held the job since 1972, but the same economic troubles that doomed Edwin Edwards were threatening the senator. Johnson's record was no longer viewed as suitably conservative for the state. Sensing a real chance of ousting the incumbent, the state GOP focused on endorsing a single candidate and encouraging all others to drop out. The party settled on State Senator Ben Baggert, a very experienced state politician who had shifted from Democrat to Republican that year. All other Republican candidates ceased running, except for David Duke. And much to the GOP's chagrin, Duke overtook Baggert in the polls. In a desperate bid, the GOP tried recruiting former Governor David Treen to run, but sensing the impending clusterfuck, he noped out of that. It eventually became clear that Johnson would lead in the polls, but with both Baggert and Duke running, the chances of Duke entering a runoff were greater and greater. Not wanting Duke to become the face of the GOP during the runoff, and knowing Baggert was a lost cause, 8 Republican U.S. senators endorsed Johnson. The next day, Baggert rather angrily dropped out of the race. Johnson would go on to win the primary with 54% of the vote, but David Duke would finish with over 600,000 votes and 43% of the state's support.
43%?
Mm-hmm.
That's 43% too many.
It's 600,000 votes for this man who has said every single day who the fuck he is. Honestly, if it wasn't for the GOP at that time, you very well could have had Senator David Duke if he was given the chance to do a runoff, and if Bennett said one dumb thing about taxes, that could have let him into the Senate.
Do you feel like these senators, if they're still alive, watched the 2018 Alabama senator race and were just like nauseous with deja vu?
Just like, the fuck is wrong with you? I mean, I'd like to believe that's true. And I mean, especially if you see, the stuff that H.W. Bush said about Trump, I would thoroughly believe that, his scruples would have held for that long.
Yeah.
Reagan, I'm not so sure, but...
No.
It's like Reagan probably did it just because he's like, well, I have to do it to not look terrible.
Well,
I guess. Let's stay. Oh no. A man who says things I agree with can't have that.
Well, it's another day above ground.
That Faustian bargain I made with death in the 60s really has worked out. Which brings us back to 1991. Much like 1987, it was a real blood-in-the-water election. A number of major candidates announced their candidacy early, including future Governor Kathleen Blanco and Secretary of State Fox McKeithen.
Great name.
Excellent name. Both would eventually leave the race, opening the way for the Silver Fox himself, Edwin Washington fucking Edwards. He's back, baby!
Back from the dead!
He's been watching Buddy Roemer struggle, and he's back.
Oh boy.
On the other side of the aisle, David Duke was the up-and-coming outsider candidate, aka the acceptable choice for not just proud racists, but the after 3 beers at Thanksgiving racist. And David entered the race for governor. Understandably, anyone would feel down in Buddy's shoes. Buddy hired a friend of his to be his life coach and teach his staff how to battle negative thoughts.
No, Buddy, you changed your name to Buddy at 13. That's all you needed to do. That was the extent of your vision board.
Right. Everyone change your name to Buddy. Are we good? Excellent. Let's do this. Most famously, this involved Roemer and his staff wearing a rubber band around their wrist that they would snap whenever a negative thought appeared.
Oh, boy.
And not a very good look in Louisiana politics.
No.
Duke grasped on this nonsense for all it was worth, and used it to make the pretty damn conservative Roemer look like some type of Berkeley hippie. This wasn't very helpful for Roemer, but his real fuckover moment would come just a few months later in March of 1991. Encouraged by White House Chief of Staff John Sununu, Buddy Roemer left the Democrats and officially became a Republican. And also officially pissed off everyone.
Buddy.
The Dems were mad to suddenly lose their incumbent candidate.
Yeah.
But the Republicans had a much worse hand in the deal. They not only had a strongly unpopular incumbent now, but they didn't want him to begin with. Roemer attempted to get their upcoming convention canceled, seeing as how he was now the de facto GOP nominee, but the state Republicans told him to flat out fuck off. Roemer would skip the convention entirely, as did David Duke, who probably had enough common sense to realize that going would be a waste of his time, and the party would instead endorse very pro-life Roemer enemy, Congressman Clyde Holloway.
What's Holloway's deal?
I did not bother to write that down.
Okay.
I'm sure I eventually come back to it. If I remember right,
Wait, why was he an enemy?
So Roemer was more pro-choice than most Republicans at the time, and Clyde Holloway was like, zygote is human, and was it part of that crowd. During the first debate, it was a free-for-all against Roemer. Duke went after the rubber bands, Edward trashed Roemer's failures that had mostly been caused by Edwards to begin with, and the remaining candidates tried to land sound bites to take down the current kingfish. The most shocking moment, unsurprisingly, came from Duke, but surprisingly came in the form of him quoting Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech.
Get that out of your dirty, filthy mouth, you animal, David Duke.
It was used by Duke to speak against affirmative action.
Oh, for God's sake.
On Election Day, the GOP endorsed Holloway got only 5% of the vote. Roemer came in third with 26.5%, and a runoff was set between three-term Governor Edwin Edwards and David Duke. Once again, Duke was a runoff away from true political power in a race that would be dubbed the Lizard versus the Wizard.
Oh my God!
I love this election so much. It is so...
Everything is terrible, including that!
It would have been the worst time if you are a liberal in Louisiana just hanging out in New Orleans and you're like, are you fucking serious? Are you serious with this shit?
Let me eat so many beignets I die.
Wonderful
Just
death.
give me cardiac arrest right now. How many Sazeracs does it take?
God, that sounds like a really great night.
Yeah.
So now that Duke was in a runoff, he began to go national. He was interviewed by Phil Donahue, Ted Koppel, and Larry King. All would ask him of his racist past, and to all he would apologize for his past intolerance, claiming to be a born-again Christian that had grown beyond all of that.
I want to throw up.
He would press his desire to remove affirmative action and brush aside criticism as people incapable of forgiveness. Oddly enough, the more public-facing time Duke got, the more his approval rating would rise.
Huh, how about that?
And this would be despite the sort of bullshit he would have ready in response to simple questions. At one point, Phil Donahue asked Duke, and for the younger people, Phil Donahue used to have like a daytime TV show that was like Jerry Springer if he was trying to be serious, but all the words were still the same.
Yeah, Phil Donahue was the Banana Republic to Jerry Springer's Old Navy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it was daytime.
Yeah.
He
was that is really important to say. He was daytime.
Daytime.
He was the person that you were mad came on the TV if you were homesick after The Price is Right ended.
100%.
At one point, Donahue asked Duke if he believed the Holocaust had been exaggerated by the Jews. The simple and correct answer would be no.
What kind of fucking question is that, Phil Donahue, first and foremost?
But Duke's answer was, complete quote, "Of course there were terrible atrocities in Europe, and I condemn that there were terrible atrocities as well in the Soviet Union, and I oppose any oppression of people. The closest thing that I know to the policies of Germany in this country is the so-called affirmative action, or quota systems. They had quotas in Germany as well on the basis of race. I don't think you should have racial preferences." Equally as troubling Over in Mississippi, a little-known construction businessman Republican named Kirk Fordyce had run for governor and used Duke's platform against affirmative action and fictional welfare abuse to win the race. It was beginning to look like there was a way for Duke's racist policies to have a path to victory. That being said, it wasn't very easy to tell how well Duke was actually doing. Pollsters made a point that since most people didn't like admitting that out loud they supported Duke, they really couldn't ask and get a good number. Prior to the first debate, there were a couple polls that had come out that did have Duke behind 49 to 40%. But due to Duke's history of underpolling, it was easy to believe that he was virtually tied. Meanwhile, Edwards was getting the backing of nearly every politician known to man. Buddy Roemer threw his entire support behind Edwards, as did the vast majority of state Democratic and Republican politicians. While most national Republicans stayed out of the fray, President Bush dove in once again to throw as much shade as he legally could at David Duke. Bush said, "When someone asserts the Holocaust never took place, then I don't believe that person ever deserves one iota of public trust. When someone has a long record, an ugly record of racism and bigotry, that record simply cannot be erased by the glib rhetoric of a political campaign." Edwards supporters, acknowledging Edwin's shady past, also made up some bumper stickers that would become a powerful symbol for the entire campaign. The message, even for a bumper sticker, was a simple one. Vote for the crook. It's important.
I am going to be on eBay in a hot second looking for that.
I don't know if any exist that haven't already been plastered on the back of a 91 Ford Taurus. On November 6, 1991, Edwards and Duke would face each other in one final debate in Baton Rouge on Louisiana Public Broadcasting. Edwards had always been a skilled speaker and debater, but directly against Duke, it was apparent how out of his depths the Klansman was against Edwin. While Duke attempted to use his time as he had on national TV to avoid questions and talk about what he wanted, he would no sooner be called out by the moderators for avoiding an answer or get smacked around by Edwards' quick-witted retorts.
Heat it over a spoon and shoot it into my veins.
The most well-known moment came from African-American TV news reporter Norman Robinson. Directing his question at Duke, he began by saying he was scared of the possibility of a Duke governorship, and called his big history of racism diabolical, evil, and vile. Duke made the stand-up choice of interrupting him and asking what his question was going to be.
Slow clap, David Duke. You know what? You should stop there. You've already answered.
Yep. Robinson's question ended up being, given your past, convince me, sir, and other minorities like me, that they should entrust their lives and the lives of their children to you. Duke did say, I have been too intolerant at times, but also went full hashtag all people are racist.
Oof.
He then chose to end his statement by saying Jesse Jackson was a racist, and no one would ever ask that question to him. Robinson rephrased his question, asking Duke to apologize. Duke apologized to all minorities, repudiated the Klan and other neo-Nazis.
Hashtag not all wizards.
But then he just couldn't help himself and declared,
No, of course not.
You don't make up for past discrimination by putting new discrimination on people with these affirmative action programs. And there's a lot of racism that exists in all communities, not just the white community. There's violence in the streets every day directed at white people, as well as the other way around.
God.
Robinson asked if Duke meant there was racial violence directed at black people as well, to which Duke tossed a shovel aside after digging his own grave and said, Mr. Robinson, I don't think you're really being fair to me.
Oh.
To which Robinson said, well, I don't think you're really being honest, sir.
Yes. Oh my God. The eye rolling that's happening, I'm just mentioning it to those listening at home.
So Edwin Edwards, not one to miss a sudden funeral of an opponent, added, Mr. Duke has given us 20 years of hate and hurt. If he's really reformed, let him go back into the community and give back 20 years of healing and help. Then come back to be governor.
Hey, y'all, want to see a dead body?
It was then 5 kids showed up and poked David Duke with a stick. In an insane final blow, Edwards brought up articles written and published by Duke to kick Jews, blacks, and Cajuns out of Louisiana. Duke retorted, only in regard to kicking out the Cajuns, by saying, I was not the author of this plan.
Oh no, he really had that Freudian slip?
David Duke said, I was not the author of this plan.
Oh, Dookie boy.
Just dropped the casket on him.
Oh.
The next morning, the station where Robinson worked was flooded with calls, each and every one of them fuming over the way Duke was treated. By the afternoon, though, calls in support of Robinson became more predominant and stayed that way throughout the evening. The debate had lit a fire under the populace, and more specifically, the populace that Duke absolutely hated. You see, 1/3 of Louisiana's population in 1991 was black.
How about that?
And there wasn't much of a reason for them to vote for Duke.
Not really.
After the debate, it was beyond clear that there were many reasons to vote against him. It was estimated that there was an 80% turnout of the state's African-American population, and the race that had been feared to be neck and neck suddenly turned. Duke would still get over 670,000 votes, more than he had gotten during his Senate run, but instead of barely losing, he was crushed in a landslide of 61% to 39%. Edwin Edwards had won his 4th term as governor, and the black population of Louisiana proved that no matter how hard David Duke fought for power, they would always be there to shut that shit the fuck down. Now this would be a really wonderful, wholesome place to end the story of these three.
Great, so let's do that, Dusty.
But since 1991, their stories have only gotten weirder. Let's start with Edwin Edwards.
Yes!
He ended up having a pretty normal term of governor. His main activity was promoting the various forms of gambling that had been legalized under Buddy Roemer.
Wait, gambling was legal?
Oh yeah, I forgot to add that in. Buddy Roemer did legalize gambling, and that's also what pissed off people.
Yeah! Oh no!
But upon discovery that some of the gambling licenses had links to organized crime, Edwards refused to revoke their licenses.
I mean, why punch a sleeping dog?
I know, right? This began a whole new search into gambling-based political corruption, but Edwards would declare his intention to not run in the next election before anything came of it. Edwards married his second wife and retired to Baton Rouge with the intent to return to practicing law. After 2 years of peaceful semi-retirement, a lifetime of shady deals finally caught up with Edwin. He had the misfortune of being caught on film in the midst of a financial transaction. And by caught on film, I mean he was seen via FBI surveillance, and by financial transaction, I mean he gave former Congressman Cleo Fields 20 grand in cash, which Fields then proceeded to stuff in every available pocket on him.
What?
Suit pocket, pants pocket, inner suit pocket, everywhere.
Oh my god.
When the transactions came to light, Fields promised there was a hilarious reason for all of it. Clearly his writing room couldn't come up with something funny though, because he eventually just said he didn't have to give a reason for the exchange, because since he wasn't a congressman at the time, he didn't have to tell anyone what happened.
Lawyered.
Yeah. And case closed. Edwards was later snitched on by Patrick Graham, a for-profit prison asshole, who gave Edwards $845 grand in a scheme to open a juvenile prison in Louisiana, and San Francisco 49ers owner Edward D. Bartolo Jr. ended up giving Edwards $400K in an attempt to get a riverboat casino license there.
Wow.
People finally flipping on Edwards was finally enough to land him in jail. He was found guilty of 17 counts of charges ranging from racketeering, extortion, money laundering, mail fraud, and wire fraud because the internet, and sent to prison.
AOL fraud.
Yeah. Your picture looked different.
You got 5 years.
And Edwards ended up getting sent to prison in 2002.
Wow.
While in prison, Edwards divorced his second wife, which he made to sound like a favor he was doing for her. There were 2 major attempts to gain a pardon for Edwards, one in 2007 with George W. Bush, and one in 2011 with Barack Obama. Both were declined. But prison wasn't all that awful for Edwin, because it was there that he met his third wife, his pen pal, Trina.
Trina.
It kind of sounds like Trina chose to write to Edwin, and during his final years in jail, she visited the prison on weekends and holidays. By the time Edwards was released from prison in 2011, Edwin was 83, and Trina was 32.
No.
They were married less than a month after Edwin's release.
No.
Making a natural pivot, Edwin and Trina starred in an A&E reality show called The Governor's Wife.
Oh, is it available on YouTube? And can I watch it?
I don't think A&E gives a fuck. I'm pretty sure it's on everything. The show mostly focused on Trina and her challenges of being viewed as a gold digger, relating with her 60-year-old stepdaughters, and considering having a baby, which they eventually did. The show only lasted 1 season, but the two adamantly regard it as a huge and horrible mistake.
So do my future eyes.
In 2014, Edwin made his return to politics because you just can't keep him away. And he ran for congressman of Louisiana's 6th district. It was a severe uphill battle due to the district being overwhelmingly conservative. Edwin was the only major Democrat running against 4 top-ranked Republicans, and that split the vote enough to push Edwin into the runoff, winning 30% of the vote. He would face manager of the Louisiana Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, Garrett Graves, and would lose badly to Garrett, 62-38. Rumors persist that the currently 92-year-old Edwards may run again, but due to his previous conviction, he cannot legally run for a 5th term of governor until 2027.
At which point he will be how many years old?
Forever. He'll be, let's do the maths, 99 or 100. And weirdly enough, that was actually why they were wanting
He'll do it. You know what?
Oh, he will. If he's alive, he will run.
He's a gambling man, and I will put money on him.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing, is the reason that his supporters wanted pardons was to get him to run for governor again, because once he's pardoned, he can run for governor.
Yeah, no dice.
So, let's get this one out of the way. Part 2. Where's David Duke been?
Ugh.
After 1991, David Duke returned to his state house seat. However, instead of running for re-election after 2 very public losses, he shot for the racist moon and ran for president again. The big issue, though, is the position of racist dipshit was already taken by future podcast topic Pat Buchanan. Fresh off of coronating himself lead general of the culture war, Buchanan was locked and loaded to unseat George H.W. Bush, which he would eventually fail to do, not even winning one state in the process. So Duke, without an unoccupied lane to run in and actively being fought by heads of the party, he really wasn't able to make the ballot of any primary until the 6th one in South Carolina. He couldn't even get on the ballot in New Hampshire.
And they take everyone.
Yeah, it is. It is the 4 a.m. bar of primaries.
Wow.
And in South Carolina, David Duke got 7% of the vote. Luckily, that didn't get him any delegates, but still. He would only end up on 15 primary ballots, nowhere near enough to even challenge the incumbent Bush, and was only able to clear 5% of the vote in South Carolina, Louisiana, and was able to get a freakish 10% in Mississippi. In the end, Duke hadn't even gained 1% of the total vote and came in 4th overall behind Bush, Buchanan, and one of the toughest competitors out there. None of the above. In 1996, Duke set his sights a little lower and ran again for senator of Louisiana. This time around, the GOP stood their ground and backed State Representative Woody Jenkins, who would place first in the jungle primary. Duke would finish 4th behind 2 Democrats, including eventual winner Mary Landrieu. Duke would get 11.5% of the vote, but missed the cutoff by 120,000 votes. As undeterred as he damn well should have been, Duke lowered his sights again, and in 1999 ran for U.S. House in Louisiana's 1st district, the very seat of his previous political win. He'd face former Governor David Treen, and the man who succeeded Duke's state house seat, David Vitter.
Right, it's just the same names over and over again.
Repeatedly. The triumvirate of Daves, and a candidate named Monica, finished close together in the top 4, but Duke was no match for the former governor and the man who didn't immediately abandon his state post for national ambitions. Duke would finish 3rd with 19% of the vote and 3,700 votes behind the cutoff. David Vitter eventually went on to win.
Oh, he was the one who would wear diapers.
David Vitter?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to look this up.
Okay.
There was a thing where it's like, I think they...
oh, the sex scandal.
Yes.
Yep, that's the one.
Yes,
that's the
David
one.
Vitter.
Yep. Fed up with the Republican Party not willing to openly endorse a schemy racist, Duke joined the Reform Party in 1999. After Reform Party presidential nominee Pat Buchanan lost, he left the party.
Was this before or after Rocky became a part of the Reform Party?
It would have been before.
Okay. All right, Reform Party.
Yeah. In 2004, Duke ultra-lowered his sights and worked as the campaign manager for his bodyguard's congressional run. His bodyguard would place 2nd with 6% of the vote, but the winner, Bobby Jindal, would just barely win with 78.5% of the vote. In 2012, Duke would claim that the Tea Party movement had been begging him to run for president again, but he would later decide not to run. In 2016, Duke would return to politics in 2 ways. 1, he would encourage his followers to vote for Donald Trump for president, despite Trump's support of Israel, which Duke had a real hard time dealing with for some reason.
Jeez, who knew?
And 2, motherfucker would run for Senate goddamn again. Claiming to be encouraged by the support Trump was receiving nationwide, Duke ran to quote-unquote defend the rights of European Americans. Shittily enough, Duke ended up polling well enough to make the debate stage. As much as I would like to believe that Duke did poorly in the jungle primary, he actually did super bad. In his worst loss yet, Duke would finish in 7th and was only able to find 58,000 racists to vote for him. In a really hilarious death blow to his future political ambitions, his campaign donation lists were leaked, outing the remainder of his supporters. Which sadly leaves us with the man who would be king. A man many believed would be the great governor, and many even believed one day president, Charles Edson Buddy Roemer. Comparatively, Roemer took his re-election loss in stride. After returning to Harvard to teach a quick class in economics, Buddy returned to Louisiana and formed the Sterling Group, a business that dealt with international plastics trade, because he's a sexy motherfucker. He later founded the Business First Bank in Baton Rouge, and to this day remains its president and CEO. When 1995 rolled around, Buddy attempted his first political comeback and reclaimed the governorship. This time, though, Buddy took a much stronger conservative stance, moving to the right with the rest of the state, and somewhat adopting the anti-welfare stance that Duke had run on. Roemer was the only Republican running, and with a unified base of support, it looked like he was destined to move back to the governor's mansion. That is until 2 months before the election, when State Senator Mike Foster did exactly what Buddy did in 1991 and switched from a Democrat to a Republican. Compared to Foster, Roemer was downright liberal. Foster had a long list of things he hated, such as welfare, gun control, affirmative action, and racial quotas. He promised to run Louisiana like a business, which we all know has never gone wrong in any iteration. With those 2 months, Buddy would lose the lead and fall back into 4th place in the primary, missing the cutoff by 1.2% of the vote.
So close.
Foster would go on to defeat Edwin Edwards, beneficiary Cleo Fields, in the election. Mr. Stuffed Money in his pockets lost the election for governor. Depressingly enough, Buddy had been fucked one last time by David Duke. While Duke's endorsement of Foster had some value amongst the mouth-breathing fuckwad crowd, Foster found more value from Duke's mailing list of supporters. The exact value was about $150,000 that he paid to Duke to get it. Foster also really wanted to endorse Duke for Senate in 1996, but the state GOP said, "Don't fucking do that, you idiot," and Foster acquiesced. Buddy would leave politics entirely for 17 years. He did have a brief interest in running for Senate in 2004, but never became more serious than thinking about it. In his final push to return to politics, Buddy swung big, and he ran for president in 2012.
What?
Running as a Republican, Buddy focused heavily on campaign finance reform. He refused corporate donations, money from super PACs, and limited personal donations to $100. Roemer never gained much of a following amongst the top 4 field of Mitt Romney, Santorum, Ron Paul, and Newt Gingrich.
He's very much in the wrong field, the wrong party.
He finished last in Iowa, and not just last, 17 votes last.
Like, as in only 17 votes?
Only 17 votes in Iowa. Notably, he lost to Herman Cain, who had dropped out a month prior.
Wow.
He also lost to all combined write-in candidates, and the ever-veritable none of the above. He finished 7th in New Hampshire, and only qualified on 5 other ballots. After that race, with his best performance being a 3rd-place finish in Puerto Rico, 10 months after announcing his candidacy, Roemer moved on to greener pastures. On November 30th, 2011, Buddy announced that he was seeking the nomination of the online convention party and future podcast topic, Americans Elect. While Buddy led in votes throughout the year, Americans Elect would fold without selecting a candidate due to not getting enough support. Buddy's 6,293 supporters were probably not happy. Next, Buddy began courting the Reform Party. The state party chairman in New Jersey was super stoked at the idea, and really, it was probably what the party needed. They had gone from getting 465,000 votes with Ralph Nader in 2004, and dropping to getting 481 total votes in 2008 after nominating complete unknown and businessman Ted Wheel. The Reform Party needed a big return, and a former governor had the potential to do that. And at their state convention on April 14th, 2012, Buddy lost to tech entrepreneur Andre Barnett. He lost bad. 70-30 bad.
Within the Reform Party?
Yeah.
Oh, Buddy!
The last gasp began a week before the Reform Party would refuse him. Buddy had reached out to support from the Modern Whig Party, a group that had never nominated a candidate for president prior to 2012 or since. On April 3rd, the Modern Whigs chose to endorse T.J. O'Hara, an independent candidate whose job appears to be professional mentor. It had been a genuinely depressing campaign with nothing to show for it in the end. And that was the last we heard of Buddy Roemer as a politician. For the final word, I think it's best to go back to Ron Gomez. When asked about Buddy Roemer, Gomez said, "He was a dynamic orator who could light up an audience with his first 2 sentences. When he got wound up, it was truly evangelical. And he made sense. His wiry 5'7", 135-pound frame would seem to uncoil and grow as he outlined his vision as a fighter against crime, corruption, and waste in government, poor education, tax, and industrial pollution. He could have been one of Louisiana's great governors. The state's horrible financial condition when he took office, his dependence on an inexperienced and sometimes rashly immature staff in his first year or so, an overly ambitious legislative agenda, his own unpredictable dealings with individual legislators, all combined to his failures he suffered. Today, Buddy Roemer is an investor and advisory board member of the Young Turks. He is still a registered Republican."
2 things.
Yes.
1, I do not appreciate being Trojan horsed David Duke in this.
I'll try not to do it again. I just knew that was the only way to keep you in the room. Like, Oona, we're talking about David Duke today. Oh, we're done with the podcast already?
You.
1 episode? Great.
Secondly, with regards to David Duke's, I guess, first national campaign.
Yeah.
I don't know why, like, those in favor of action and the ACLU have not pointed, rather, like, what I'm trying to say is, like, the loss of the Voting Rights Act can be felt by the fact that David Duke couldn't even get on the ballot in lily white New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But still got 10% of the vote in Mississippi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
still getting 56,000 votes in Louisiana whenever he decides to run.
Don't fucking tell me that we're all good and clear.
No, we are clearly not. All in all, this is really the story of how black people saved America once a fucking again.
I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to dive into Louisiana politics.
Oh, it's a mess.
This has been delightful.
It is such a fucking mess.
Oof.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us again this week, and I hope you join us next week where I will not be catfishing you with a white supremacist again.
Yay! And
or
hopefully...
will I?
No.
Oh, no!
Let's end on that note.
See you next week, y'all. Gadfly is a production of Added Serotonin. Our theme song is Sophomore Makeout by Silent Partner. You can find us on Twitter at gadflypod, or you can find us on Instagram at gadfly_podcast.